Howdy everybody, how y'all doing? And welcome to the Guy's House, where we try to keep things cool, calm, collected, and mostly a bit chill. Well, one of the things I've been thinking about lately, and once again it's a little bit more wordplay, because one of the things that, one of the things I think it's very apparent is that how language really defines, a lot of how we interpret, a lot of how we convey the world around us, right? I like to say that medium defines the message, or at least influence a message. And sometimes the medium, if you think about it long enough, the medium can kind of defy the message too, right? Because sometimes when you're trying to say something in a certain context or format, right, or maybe it's just in the text format, see what I did there, sometimes it doesn't work, right? Sometimes you can put an idea into a poem or a song and it translates real well and it lets people have a glimpse into an idea, and it carries some sort of, to a higher space, right? And it kind of transcends this normal conversation. But then sometimes things need to be spoken out directly and honestly, and sometimes you gotta fumble through the whole conversation to get there, right? And that's a little difficult as well. I mean, let's face it, the production and writing that goes into creating a song that captures a moment perfectly versus the raw, honest effort of spilling your guts to somebody, right? It's still a lot of work. And, kind of on that idea that there's a bit of a scale of, how we communicate what we need, between written, between verbal, and then there's the nonverbal communication. I mean, some might say there's kind of a scale or a gradient there, right? Because unless we're kind of in a scientific test tube arena, most of our communication, whether it be nonverbal, verbal, written, type, and all that, tone, usually there's a few nuances that kind of help us, when we understand somebody, kind of how we connect, right? So, none of these are really operating in an isolated point, right? There's concentric circles of communication, right? Where you're texting, you can learn somebody's tone. When you're, when there's a song, you have the tone. If somebody's performing a piece of art, then you definitely have the words, the tone, and the actions in the performance art to piece the whole thing together, right? There's a lot going on there. So, one of the things, with all that rambling, right, and get that out of the way, with all of that said, with all the focus on, there's a lot of talk about how everybody's, not just in the way they communicate, but everybody's on sort of a spectrum, because that's kind of the paradigm that we all fit on some sort of scale, sliding scale, gradient scale, right? That there's no fixed points on this whole thing, that we kind of slide back and forth, give or take, depending on what's going on. Like even personality types, depending on what school of thought you adhere to, there's usually kind of a side idea that you lean towards, but you could, be high functioning or in a positive way, or kind of depressed and be functioning in a different way. So, I bet you're all wondering, okay, Punk, you've been rambling for about 3 to 5 minutes, and I really need you to make sense of this, or I'm gonna go, right? Well, I know some of you won't, but let's get to the point. the whole thing I'm trying to say, and the whole thing I'm really trying to ramble on and really hammer home, I mean, whatever tool you want to use, is that so many times when people want to talk about defining themselves and defining how we should look at the world, there's this room for give, right? There's this idea that you need to allow for some nuance and allow for some variance and, you know, plus or minus, even in math, right? But when it comes to especially seasons like this, and I'm not gonna go really political, but we all know what's been going on, and maybe I'm filming this before we get the results of the election because I don't want to get a hot button and start ranting about something else, because what I'm talking about has a bigger sort of thing, right? The point is, where's the room for gray, you know, grayscale? Where's the room for the in-between when so many of these conversations, so many of these things that we've assumed have nuance and have some sort of variance have turned into this black or white, this binary sort of yes or no sort of thing, and depending on how we want to view or express or explain somebody else based on our own point of views, it's sort of the yes or no value, right? If there's a gradient, there should be room for, you know, different spots on the scale, on the sliding scale, not just one or two fixed points, right? Or, I mean, in a lot of ways it feels like it's not a scale at all. There's just two positions that don't even connect on any sort of slide scale at all. Which is kind of ironic when you think about the wording of things, right? Because, like I said, in gradient, grayscale, I know it's kind of silly, but, well, I think that matters. But the other thing, the other word that people want to talk about is the word spectrum, right? Well, if you think about spectrum, like, let's say the spectrum of light, right? Or the spectrum of visible light. We got our good old friend Roy G. Biv, and I'm not trying to talk about the symbolisms of the rainbow, just that, well, the spectrum of light is a lot of different things, a lot of different colors that blend together. And I mean, we can talk about the science of things, but I don't really. But the truth is, if you look at the spectrum of light and the spectrum of visible light, well, there's a lot of light waves that we can't see with our own physical eye, right? And there's a lot of, X-rays and gamma rays and all these other things, wavelengths, microwaves, that are used for different things that we know exist, kind of like the wind, but we can't see them, right? But we have tools that allow us to do that, right? Like, I don't know if you've ever really, seen some of that high-tech stuff, like the people like to call the predator vision, right? About all that cool technology, the FLIR cameras and stuff that they use to see the unseeable, right? And they assort color values to those things as well. So, what I'm getting at is, with all the nuances and all the variances and all the things that we see clearly in real life, and all the things so many people fight for to prove how they're a little bit different than everybody else, or find a label that's slightly different than something else that already exists, right? In this pursuit of defining our own uniqueness, why Why is it so important to dumb everything down to a yes or no question, right? When all the language is used to talk about and share the beauty of the world and the beauty of our differences, until all of a sudden we find one thing, an important enough thing, to decide that this person is different than us, and then all of a sudden we only have a yes or no value. I mean, maybe not we as in all of us here who hang out, but we as a Western culture, we as a, well, I mean, you can kind of see with all the election year stuff, there's a whole bunch of the binary and less of the diversity that the language implies. So, I mean, I wish I had an answer, but I just want to challenge you all guys to think about, well, the whole thing that we've been trying to do here on the Ice House. A lot of my friends out there, you know, I had some great conversations with you guys, either in the chats or on the channels, that why don't we focus on what the language really means? Why don't we actually try to find the gradient scale, the room for give? Why don't we enjoy and celebrate the things that make us different and work well together, instead of just trying to find that one uncommonality to prove why we shouldn't get along, or prove why someone else is the other, right? Because division is easy, and we're getting too used to it. And I mean, whoever's going to be running this country, you know, we all know who's running the country now for the next 4 years, or, well, maybe we don't because the ballots are still being counted. I don't know, but maybe it's not a binary of it'll be perfect or it'll be terrible. Maybe it's all of us still trying to make things work and connect with each other and be there for each other, because I've noticed so many times that, you know, en masse or things reported, or, you know, statistics don't always add up to the human compassion and the paying it forward and wanting to connect with your neighbors. And I still think there's a lot of people out there who are trying to see the best in everybody else and are tired of all this division. So maybe the rainbow is something else entirely, right? Something that it's always been. And maybe the gray has always been in the grayscale, in the gradient. I guess what I'm trying to say is you can find what you're looking for if you look hard enough, but if it's at the sacrifice of missing out everything that's also available, everything that's in front of your eyes, and the beauty of the world, and the beauty of the people around us, and the things we can learn from people who disagree with us, I mean, why are you looking so hard to find it? Well, I know it's a little bit tone different than usual, but hope you guys enjoyed it, and, well, if you have any thoughts or comments, leave them down below, and we'll see you next time. Bye!